Okay, so today we're going to dive into some sources that really cover a lot of ground.
Everything from economic accountability to some really high-stakes regulatory debates.
Exactly. We're sort of looking for where public confidence is being tested right now, and we have to start with this grade.
The one from the International Monetary Fund. They just looked at India's official economic data and gave it a C.
A C, that sounds, well, not great. I mean, coming from the IMF, that's a pretty big deal.
It is. A C is the second lowest rating you can get. It basically means the data has, and I'm quoting here, shortcomings that somewhat hamper surveillance.
So they're saying they can't get a clear picture.
Essentially, yeah. And the reasons why are they're pretty technical, but also really important.
Let's get into it. I saw they mentioned the base year they're using is still 2011-12.
Right, which is ancient in economic terms.
Hmm.
But the bigger issue, I think, is what they call the deflators.
The tools they use to strip out inflation.
Yeah, exactly. They're using wholesale price indices instead of the preferred producer price indices. It might sound like jargon, but it means the very calculation of real growth could be, a bit distorted.
So the whole foundation is just a bit wobbly then.
You could say that.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they pointed out these sizable discrepancies between the different ways they measure GDP.
The production versus the expenditure approach.
Precisely. When those two numbers don't line up, it just raises more questions about the data's completeness.
That idea of an institutional challenge, it feels like a perfect lead-in to our next topic, the whole digital world.
Absolutely. The sheer speed of it.
Right. How do you even begin to regulate content that goes viral in, a nanosecond? That's what the Supreme Court is grappling with.
And they seem pretty frustrated. They're pushing the government to consider, I think the term was an impartial and autonomous authority to vet content.
To vet things that are obscene, perverse, or even anti-national.
Yeah. And they threw out some pretty specific ideas, too.
Like using Aadhaar details to verify a user's age for certain material. That's a big step.
It's a huge step. But the court was really clear. They said they don't want to tinker with free speech. Their point was much more practical.
It was.
That by the time a social media platform takes something down, millions of people have already seen it. The damage is done.
So they're demanding preventative mechanisms. A firewall, basically.
It's a good way to put it.
That tension, between freedom and having a framework, it's the exact same debate we're seeing with the new labor codes.
On one hand, the government's framing this as a much-needed modernization.
And you can see the logic, can't you? A single registration, a single return that cuts down on so much red tape for businesses.
And look, bringing gig and platform workers into the Social Security net, that's a major forward-looking move.
It is, but then you have the trade unions, and they're pushing back hard.
Really hard. They see the whole thing as fundamentally anti-worker.
They're using phrases like hire and fire. So what's the core of their argument? Where does this modernization become, in their view, exclusion?
It's really in the details, comes down to the thresholds. For example, one of the codes raises the minimum number of workers a factory needs to have before certain safety rules apply.
Ah, okay. So if you're a smaller operation,
you could suddenly fall outside the scope of the law. So they argue many workers could actually lose protections like minimum wage or safety standards, even as the codes are supposed to be expanding coverage.
So we've looked at the C grade for national data, this urgent call for preventive mechanisms online, and the very fine print in labor reform.
And there's a common thread running through all of it, isn't there? It feels like it all comes down to the burden of proof.
The burden of proof, how do you mean?
Well, think about something our sources mention, like the revision of electoral rolls. We're seeing that marginalized citizens, like trans persons or members of the Matua community, are increasingly being asked to produce very old documents to prove who they are against outdated records.
So the burden is shifting. It's not on the state to prove you don't belong. It's on you to prove you do.
Exactly. This system is placing the entire onus on the individual to prove their own legitimacy. And that connects back to everything.
Right. Whether it's proving your citizenship, verifying your identity just to get online, or even just us as citizens trying to trust economic figures that have been given a C grade.
It all comes down to trust.
So I guess the question for everyone listening is, how does this shifting burden of proof change what you expect from public institutions? And what do you think is the single most critical element India needs to prioritize to get things back in alignment? Is it political will, clearer laws, or simply better institutional capacity? Something to think about.